Yep.
Hi, everyone. First off, thanks for joining us today. So we're going to be talking about enhancing modern applications with Splunk Observability Cloud. So you might have noticed we talked quite a bit about Splunk. You might have heard about it. I'm actually from Splunk. My name's Annette Shepard. I'm a director of product marketing at Splunk, and I focus on observability. So I'm here today with Sunny, and I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thank you, Annette. Thank you, first of all, for coming in on a short notice, because I know the Splunk and Cisco acquisition just closed like 30 days ago. So we had to prep up and get Annette on board so that we can go and talk about modern applications, and specifically talk about Splunk Observability. Splunk, it's known for security, incident, event management, and logs. But obviously, over the past 3 years, there's a lot of investments which have gone in for observability, especially for modern applications. So we thought we'll go ahead and do this session and show you what those capabilities are, and also talk about overall how Cisco and Splunk kind of comes together from a vision point of view. My name is Sunny Dua. I'm a director of product management here at Cisco, and been with the company for 3 years, so this is my third Cisco Live in US, and a few in Amsterdam and Melbourne. So excited to have you all. Thank you for choosing this session, and thank you for moving in the front, because we will be doing a couple of demos. So let me quickly walk you through the agenda. So what we'll do is we'll first talk about the concept of full stack observability and what does it mean, right? And why is it required? And then we'll jump on and talk about challenges which your teams face on a day-to-day basis, especially around applications, infrastructure, networking, security, switching them all together so that you're able to see where are the root causes in the environments, what are causing problems. And then we'll jump into a few of those use cases. At Splunk and also at Cisco, when we came together, we decided that there are a bunch of use cases which we support for our full stack observability vision. They are just now supercharged with Splunk coming in, because there are a bunch of capabilities which are already out there in Splunk. We can just combine them together and start working with our customers and helping them solve for end-to-end use cases, whether it's come to observability at the infrastructure layer, the application layer, and so on and so forth. So we'll touch upon that, and then we'll go into a live demo, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. So we'll see if the demo gods are happy. We'll do a live demo. Otherwise, I do have a backup recording as well, telling you. And then we'll jump into Q&A. Again, we'll keep it interactive. If you have questions, raise your hand, and we'll be more than happy to answer those questions. With that, I just want to set the context, and I think you guys, if you attended the keynote this morning, I did, and it was great to hear that how digital experiences are the most important thing for our customers. And we hear it from study after study and conversations after conversations, that this is becoming a key boardroom metric. It's no longer cloud strategy being a boardroom metric. Everybody has one now. But they want to make sure that using any cloud or any application or using any kind of technology, whether it's infrastructure or software, they're able to provide the right set of experience to their customers. Because if you're not able to, your competition will. And now it's very easy for somebody to switch from app A to app B. It's just a few clicks to go from one experience to another. And if you don't get a good experience, you're bound to not go back and even not be a promoter as well. So with digital experience becoming a key strategy for every boardroom, when we spoke to our customers, 75% of them say that this has become a point of discussion and very critical for the last 3 years. And hence, CXOs are looking for information or tooling out there which can help them get into the digital experience measurement. And obviously, this comes right from measuring things and then reporting them for all the business critical workflows. Now, 98% of them are saying that this is just going to double down, especially after the pandemic. We have moved a lot of our services to digital, and we don't want footprint to come to our stores, rather everybody to go ahead and interact with us digitally. And hence, it's more critical for us to have digital experience or better digital experience for our business. I think when Splunk came in and we discussed digital experience with them, I think Annette had a good story about digital experience requires digital resilience. Do you want to talk about what is digital resilience?
Yeah, and I know if you were attending the keynote today, you probably heard about digital resilience quite a few times. We all know if there's one constant, it's change. I'm sure that quote has been attributed to multiple people that are not the actual person who said it, but that is what digital resilience is about. So it's really about how can you not just survive, but how can you thrive when those disruptions are thrown at you? How can you find, how can you fix those issues, those problems as quickly and efficiently as possible?
And why do you think those problems are?
Oh, that's a good question. So I think a lot of this is that, as you all know, life has become much more digital. So either you're doing things on the internet, you are doing things on your phone. Even if a lot of times you're doing something in person, there's technology behind the scenes that is actually supporting almost everything. Services, digital experience, everything, all of those touch points with users, that's all exploded. And then along with that have been the number of tools that are used to actually monitor all of that and ensure that everything is up and running.
Yep, absolutely. And I think around 6 years ago, I was on a cloud discussion, like a webinar, and the question was around applications and what is happening to applications. And back then I used to tell, hey, applications will modernize, they'll run on Kubernetes and microservices, and they'll be distributed. I think that time has come. So what you're explaining is that they are running all over the place.
Yep.
And the complexity of managing all of that is becoming difficult day by day. And I think what you said about more tools, it's not just more tools, there's more data now.
Yep.
I guess there are more personas out there. At the same time, there are more failures as well. As you look at these complex applications, and we'll kind of demo a couple of these use cases where it's great to know that you can develop very quickly and release new software very quickly with the new tools out there. But at the same time, there are chances of failure more so ever, which is not good for the businesses. And when I say not good, there are businesses which have closed down. Right? There are bottom lines, top lines getting impacted day after day because of which digital businesses close down. And we are over here at Cisco are looking to solve this problem along with Splunk to make sure that we can help customers not only thrive, but also outperform their competition when it comes to digital experiences. With that, I have a funny story, and I think you talked about changes. So Annette and I was discussing this. I'll not go into the full story, but Annette, we discussed war rooms. So any of you have sat in a war room? Okay. All right, I can see the sad face, yes. All right, so the story goes back to the point when the digital or the currency notes were banned in India. So I was that time in the US, and I got a call that you have to be in India with the customer who was trying to get online banking on their phone. This is a telecom customer, one of the largest in Asia and Africa. And the problem with them was that their system to add money to the mobile banking application was down every day at around 9 a.m. and around 5 p.m. in the evening. And it was like a performance issue. Things will go down, they will come back up. So it's not even just down, it's just going up and down. The transactions are not going through. And there are a team of 20 people who flew in, consultants. Back then I was a consultant, and went to the customer side. The CIO was sitting on the desk, like right on the desk, and she's like, what the hell is going on? We've paid you so much as a vendor. I'll not name the vendor, but what's going on? You have to help me because there are millions of subscribers who are not able to buy groceries now because they don't have currency notes. They're depending on this app. And guess what? It took us 1 hour to fix the issue, but 5 days to find out what the app is. So it took us 5 days sitting there figuring out what is the application scope, what is the network scope, what is the infrastructure scope. The problem was, when we went to the network guy, they gave us a list of IP addresses. These are the servers where applications are running. When I went to the application guy, they were talking all code and talking about their services which they've built. And when you go to the infrastructure people, they were talking about VMs, and these are all the VMs. Go figure out what makes up an application and how do you draw all that context together. And that is where we believe that having a full stack story is critical. Right? So war rooms are painful. I think you all have gone through it. But we'll talk about technology and real use cases where war rooms can be settled down by being predictive. And at the same time, if you get into a war room situation, at least you're talking common languages between all your teams because you're looking at all the same data. That probably is a good time to introduce full stack observability. So Cisco Full Stack Observability is not a product, just be very clear. It's a concept of bringing data together. And this data is for every environment. So whether it's network, whether it's security, whether it's applications, can you bring all that data together in a common platform so that we can build use cases on top of it and help solve the problems that we have been talking about? And this is a nice vision of kind of showcasing what that is. But the key point over here is that you might have data from networking, infrastructure, multi-cloud security. You can bring all of that together, but still the problem is that you have a lot of data. And how do you solve for prioritization in terms of what should I fix first and what should I fix later? That's where business context comes in. So both at Splunk and Cisco, we have been looking at a concept of business workflows or business transactions. And today I'll demonstrate some of that. But the core concept is that at the end of the day, it does not matter if a server is down. What matters is what service or what digital experience it is impacting. And can you quickly connect the dots between the end user experience and the infrastructure and applications, whether it's network or security, and figure out where exactly the problem is so that you can go ahead and troubleshoot and fix it. Even better, you can proactively do it. Now, we spoke a little bit about the use cases. I like the next slide, which basically makes it a little real. So we talked about the platform, which is built on OpenTelemetry, which is industry-leading open source way of collecting data, transforming data. And both Cisco and Splunk are working together on OpenTelemetry. In fact, we are the #1 contributor in terms of number of contributors and the number of contributions done, which basically means that we're trying to go ahead and democratize telemetry by making it open source, that you can switch it to any platform. But yeah, we would like you to have it on the Cisco platform or Splunk platform in this case. But once you have that, you can start building the use cases or using the use cases which we have built on top of it, whether it's ITOps, business risk observability, digital experience monitoring, or network monitoring. All of these are kind of a part of the use cases. But then comes Splunk. So do you want to talk about what Splunk adds to the mix?
Yeah, so with Splunk, we bring in additional cloud-native, essentially functionality. So infrastructure monitoring, APM for cloud-native applications, as well as my personal favorite, you hear me talk about it all the time, IT service intelligence, which I'll talk about here in a little bit, but a lot of really great functionality that will help you find and fix problems much, much faster across your entire landscape, as well as get that full visibility.
And I think you're missing the big one, the logs.
Oh, yeah, how did I forget that? I don't know how I forgot that. Yeah, most people, if they've ever heard the term or the word Splunk, if they've heard about our company, they think log analytics. We are, I'm just gonna toot our own horn. I think we are hands down the strongest player in the market when it comes to log analytics. And if you have been on the floor at all, we have some demos for that. We're actually, I don't know if we're gonna jump into that today, but
a little bit.
Yeah, we also do bring, you know, a little bit of knowledge of logs, yes.
A little bit, yeah. Thank you. So obviously, when we talk to our Cisco customers across the board, I've seen 95% overlap in terms of having Splunk logging. And all these customers have come to us and said, the only thing you need to do for us, the #1 thing, can you connect all of these logs and make them useful so that they're all connected to the infrastructure and applications so that I can get to the root cause faster? Because right now it's all about the swivel chair approach. You're doing everything in one tool and suddenly logs are needed and then you have to lose that context and go directly into Splunk and start looking for logs. We will try to solve for that as well in today's use case so that we can show you what we've already built and how we connect the dots together in terms of logs as well. Cool, all right. So let's do this. Let's kind of go and talk about how all of this comes together in terms of a little bit of product portfolio, and then we'll jump into the use cases and do the demos as well. So when we talk about full stack observability portfolio, again, everything starts with data. So as Annette said, we are at the base built with Splunk Enterprise or Splunk Cloud. Now, a lot of our customers across the board want to remain air-gapped. They want to be in their own data center and not use public cloud. We've made sure that with Splunk Enterprise, they have that access. They have all this data running in their own data center. But if they're not hosting or they don't want to host that data, they can move to Splunk Cloud, and that becomes their choice where they want to host all the data with us. Now, whether it's enterprise or cloud, in both cases, The service for the data is to help the apps, because remember, those apps are serving the digital experience. From an app perspective, we have a solid story with App Dynamics SaaS, which is the #1 APM tool for a long time, which helps you with your 3-tier applications, whether they're running on-prem, and you want to run App Dynamics itself on-prem, or do you want to run it in the cloud? Both the options are available. Whether you want to monitor monolithic applications or 3-tier applications, both of them are monitored and observed. But what Splunk brings into table.
Yeah, so we bring, if you hear us talk about Splunk Observability, that's our portfolio. It's actually made of 2 different things. So one is Splunk Observability Cloud. The other that you see sitting on top there is Splunk IT Service Intelligence. And then if we jump into the next slide, we can actually see a little bit closer. It's a bit of an eye chart. Apologies for those of you in the back. We did give you warning to come up to the front. So what is involved in Splunk Observability Cloud? This is, again, for cloud native. We have APM, we have infrastructure monitoring, we have digital experience monitoring, and then up on the top there, we have Splunk ITSI. I'm going to do a quick little 5-minute side note on ITSI, because as Sunny knows, this is probably my favorite product. I'm totally biased. What Splunk ITSI does, it's kind of known, I think of it, 2 big differentiators. One is AIOps. A lot of folks think of AIOps as a point solution. They associate it with MuleSoft, Big Panda, thinking about it from the perspective of reducing alert noise. ITSI can do that. It can correlate your alerts. So essentially, ITSI can bring in all of your data in one place, give you full visibility across everything that you have, and then with that, bring in your alerts, correlate those, group those to give you events, prioritize those actually by the business importance so that you know what to dig into first when something does go wrong. So it's a full AIOps solution that's inclusive of anomaly detection, outlier detection, root cause analysis, predictive analytics, automation. All of that is supported through AI and ML, not the super, super fancy kind that everybody wants to talk about right now, the Gen AI. This is more the AI and ML that's under the hood, supporting life without you seeing it so that everything is faster, more efficient, and easier for you to do, especially when trouble does occur. The second thing that I think it's really good at that Sunny and I were talking about right before this is actually connecting your IT and your engineering teams to the business and what the business actually cares about. That's regardless of what the business cares about. And I know a lot of people, when we talk about business KPIs, everybody's mind goes to revenue. That isn't necessarily a lot of times what every business cares about. For example, if you're a hospital, you might care about hospital bed availability, ambulance availability, something of that sort might be much more important to your business counterparts, to your business stakeholders. And what ITSI can do is actually create a KPI around whatever it is that the business cares about, and then connect that to the underlying services, the underlying infrastructure that is basically supporting whatever it is that the business cares about. I think that's super cool. We a lot of times talk about it as like a non-digital KPI that the business cares about, but it's really making that connection. I'm a huge fan of ITSI. If you have any questions about it later, I can talk about it for hours, literally. But today we're actually going to dig into Splunk Observability Cloud.
Yep.
So that was my quick little ITSI pitch. So for Splunk Observability Cloud, this is going to be our focus today. And we're going to walk you through some of, I think, our key challenges coming up here in a second.
Yep,
so.
Absolutely. By the way, since Annette talked about IDSI, one of the things which I hear from Cisco customers, specifically the networking customers, we've already started doing the integrations with Thousand Eyes and Meraki. So then you can take those events as well right inside ITSI. And at the same time, any kind of alerts coming in from App Dynamics is also going into ITSI now. So that correlation work has already started. The next set of requirements which have come is around DNA Center and all the networking equipment. And can you start bringing in all those network alerts as well into ITSI so that you have a single place to go for, and you can correlate all that across network security, observability in a single place. So that's work in progress. I thought I'll talk a little bit about my product management stuff as well, living in the future. But yeah, that's coming. So if you start looking at ITSI, that'll be the business lens from where you can start looking down your infrastructure and applications across the board. Cool. With that, let's kind of talk about some of the challenges which Splunk Observability Cloud solves, and let's kind of go towards different personas. So we'll start with engineering, developers, as we call them. Developers go through this pain point of writing code, and they're the most important people, and that's why we are all sitting here. But at the same time, they have to be reactive in a lot of ways. Right? Because a lot of times they write code, they send it out of production, it worked well in dev, and there's a meme out there which you might have seen, worked well in dev, I don't know about production, who cares? But that happens a lot, and that happens with every company. At the same time, they are making changes at a rapid speed, but it's not possible for them to see the impact of that change unless you have some kind of a time machine where they can go forward in time or back in time and see what happened after the change. So there's a concept of time machine which I like, and that concept is built to the core of the Splunk Observability platform, and we'll have a look at that as well. At the same time, it's hard for them to correlate data across different telemetry signals, whether it's metrics, events, logs, traces, spans, session IDs, and so on and so forth. There is a ton to do. And how do you actually bring all those signals together in a unified way is often a challenge. In fact, I have not seen a shop where you don't have Prometheus and Grafana, and then you have other tools from where they try to bring all the data into a Grafana dashboard to correlate that manually in their head. Can we actually go ahead and use the intelligence in the platform, the predictive AI and AI/ML underneath to correlate that data automatically? So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then finally, as they go for more observability tools, and my friend Deva is sitting here, every company is cost sensitive and is data sensitive as well. It's not that they don't want the data, it's just that the data is very expensive. So how do you control the costs? More importantly, how do you measure and show back who is using what so that you can go ahead and ensure that you bill back, shame back, whatever you want to call it. So those are some key challenges which developers are facing. Since you love ITSI, do you want to talk about IT operations?
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about IT operations. So what we hear when we do talk to our customers, when we talk to folks that are in ITOps, one of the biggest issues, MTTD, MTTR. How do you make it faster? And then with that, a lot of folks are using commercial off-the-shelf applications, so things like SAP, 365. How do you get visibility into that so that you actually have visibility across your entire estate? And then also I talked about it a little bit, but reducing alert noise. So if you have a ton of different tools that are all sending off alerts that you're having to monitor, chances are that when something does go wrong, you have multiple tools alerting on that same issue, and then on top of that, you're gonna probably end up with cascading alerts. So that is something that we hear about quite a bit. And then let's see, I'm gonna cheat and look behind me. So reactive to incidents instead of proactive. So in the worst case scenario, this probably has happened to somebody in the room. You don't have to raise your hand. You probably heard something isn't running because your customer told you. That's probably not the best way to find out about it. But we do hear from a lot of teams that they're having to react. They're firefighting. They're not able to get ahead. They're not able to really focus on being proactive and solving, even if it's the same problem they saw last week, they haven't had time to actually get to the root cause and solve that issue before they're just trying to fight the next fire. And then lastly, let's see. I chatted about this a little bit with ITSI, but struggle to align IT with the business. So a lot of times we find that what the business cares about and what IT cares about, they're probably related, but they're probably talking about it in different ways. So it's almost different languages. So how do you connect those two? How do you make it so that business understands the importance of IT, and how do you make it so that IT understands the importance of the business? And that's something that we can really help to connect those dots and make sure that people can understand what the impact is to the business from both perspectives and what the impact of IT operations is on the business. And that's really also kind of shifting IT operations from a cost center to really more of a business partner and being a strategic business partner.
Yep. And I think this framework does justice to this. So this is a slide I liked, and Annette, you should talk about this, because to me it looks like a maturity model moving from being reactive to proactive. But Annette, go for it.
I mean, you pretty much
Summarized it.
You did summarize it very quickly. This is kind of what we've heard from talking to different IT operations and engineering teams. This is what we've heard from them as to the steps that they take to become more digitally resilient. So the first step, visibility. How do you see even what it is that you need to manage? How do you get visibility into all of those different things? So I talked a little bit about commercial off-the-shelf applications like SAP. How do you get that visibility so you know what's happening and you don't just have a lot of black boxes? That next step is how do you actually detect what's happening so that you know how to react when issues do occur instead of hearing from those from your customers. And then third, how do you get more, once you're kind of reacting, how do you get more proactive? How do you get there ahead of the problems so that you can keep those issues from occurring in the first place or try to minimize them as much as possible? How do you get notification if there is an alert storm that's about to hit, and how can you triage that as best possible? And then lastly, this is really that unified workflow, and Sonny, you were talking about this a little bit when you were talking about war rooms. How do you get everyone speaking the same language? How do you make sure that there aren't a bunch of blind spots, there aren't a bunch of tool silos, data silos, so that everyone is collaborating and everyone's working in unison to make sure that everything stays up and running?
Yep. And I think what I love about, sorry, go ahead. Just a question.
Question on the proactive response. Does
Yes.
that include like automated response?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah, like,
to get involved?
Yep. Yeah, so that's inclusive of that. So quick side note. So with ITSI, we have predictive analytics, and that will actually, once you set up KPIs, you can get health scores, and that can alert you up to half an hour in advance of something that's incoming. We also, with one of our content packs for ITSI, can help to make you aware when an alert storm is coming in and help to triage that. But then in addition, we have multiple different ways that we can help to automate. And that could be runbooks, playbooks, as well as like a few other, there's a ton of different, depending on the type of automation, there's a ton of different ways that you can approach that.
Yeah, in all these cases, we basically have webhook integrations as well into things like ServiceNow, PagerDuty, Slack, and so on and so forth. And customers often automate the entire process depending upon what they're doing. So especially with microservices, they're able to go ahead and quickly spin up a new microservice if there's a problem with the old one, and then troubleshoot later, because they don't want to spend hours fixing it, rather go ship something out and start working and just move the traffic to that. And that happens a lot in terms of full automation.
Are there cloud integrations like Azure?
Yeah. AWS and GCP, and I'll show you a little bit of that when we do the demo. Absolutely.
So does the foundation visibility also include like the CI discovery and marrying multiple CIs together so that we have it as a unified data? And does that all include as part of the foundation visibility, or is it something else that
Yep.
gets on somewhere else and then?
Yeah, so there are both the options. So of course, customers who are on the recent technology and collection of data, especially with open telemetry, the good news is the baggage of the open telemetry, which is basically context, comes along with the data. And the platform is smart enough to do those connections. So I know which application service is running on what infrastructure, whether it's Kubernetes or whether it's native cloud. That is something which is stitched out of the box. If you are a traditional customer using a 3-tier application, then you have ways to build in business context with tags or attributes, which you can push through the data and then group them together to say, this is my app, so which is inclusive of the infrastructure as well. So there are both the options. We are highly encouraging customers, and I have a session on Thursday morning, 8 a.m. plug-in on open telemetry. It is just talking about open telemetry and the benefits of it and how you can weave that into your observability strategy. Very critical. 8 a.m. on Thursday morning. If the Elton John show is not good for you, please come and join us.
It's 8 a.m. on Thursday?
That is correct.
Oh.
The best topic for geeks. All right. So does that answer your question? Awesome. Great. So I think the other thing which we've done is, especially to ensure that we can help customers with specific use cases, we've transformed that automation or that journey of moving from reactive to proactive into a different set of use cases, because that helps us kind of go and show you that use case live and say, see, this is a problem and this is how we solve it. So today we'll focus on, for a demo, on a couple of them. First is understand impact of changes. Any developers over here or SREs Okay, great, awesome. So developer or SRE or both? Developer. Perfect, got it. So essentially talking about how you can go release after release and look at what's the change and what's the impact of that change across those releases, and quickly using the capabilities to figure out where the problem lies. And the second one is debug those problems. So one is finding where the problem, and the second is fixing that problem, or basically going to the root cause. And I make this joke that logs don't lie. So at the end of the day, you might have metrics which might hallucinate or give you some numbers, but at the end of the day, whatever is written by the developer is true in most cases, unless it's a developer which has gone rogue. But you will see things in logs. So we'll show how metrics tell you where the problem is, events tell you why the problem is, and then you can look into logs as to what the root cause is and how can you fix it. So we'll go through those demos over the next couple of minutes. But before that, let's just kind of double click into each of these use cases. So I'll start with the developer use case, where the developer is making changes to the code, and how does that impact the SRE? Because they are the ones who are dealing with the problems. I see smiles over here, so I know Deva goes through a lot of those problems. Now, just to kind of level set, this is how a new modern application looks like, right? Simple services. It's complex. You can see the amount of back and forth which happens between the end users and the back-end technology. And even a single microservice change can break something, right? So as you go ahead and do, let's say, payment transfers or place orders and the transfer completes, for a user it's seamless. It usually takes, what, 5 seconds? 10 seconds for your payment to get transferred from one account to another. But in the back end, you have multiple different services working in unison. And nobody else than, I think Deva knows this. By the way, he works for PSCU, which is the large, Valera now, okay. So they serve all the credit unions across the United States. So you can think about how big that is. But this is the complexity which happens in the back end. And for a developer, you will be able to go ahead and ship out that change pretty seamlessly because it's easier. It's all CI/CD based, microservices based. But for the SRE, if the problem happens, it's very hard to debug as to where the problem is. Especially if the change has happened, can I do a comparison between before and after? That before and after story sounds pretty cool, but it's very hard to achieve. So we'll see in one of the demos as to how we can come to those desired outcomes. Specifically, can I monitor the performance out of the box for the key workflows? Can you build those key workflows out of the box? Can I look at changes, and based on those changes, can I look at what was before and what happened after? Can I get to the root cause pretty quickly with that shared context between the developer and the SRE? So that's kind of one use case which we'll demonstrate. And Ed, do you want to talk about the second one?
Yeah, and then I can chat about debugging problems in microservices. So for this one, this is actually a pretty straightforward use case. This is just more about making sure that you have your logs, your traces, your metrics, your other telemetry data that's necessary when an issue does occur so that you can figure out what is actually happening and what's going on. Now, this is made, of course, more difficult because oftentimes there is tooling that you're working with that is specific to each one of those types. A lot of times those tools don't talk to each other. What that means is that you are having to jump in and out of different tools, back and forth, getting that context, making sure that everything is relevant is much harder. It takes more time, and it is usually pretty frustrating as well. So that's really kind of the crux of what this use case is about. Now, what we hear from folks that we talk to about this is that their desired outcomes are really about getting that granular alerting that is specific to what they actually want to look at. So how do you detect what's happening so that you even know that you need to look at something? And then when you are starting to troubleshoot, making sure that you have that unified visibility of all of those different, the different types of data. So your metrics, your logs, your traces, how do you get that all in one place so that you can figure out what's actually causing the problem? And then in addition, a lot of times, like for Splunk, this isn't an issue because we have all of these things together, but getting double charged for logs. So if you have logs in various places, you might be getting double charged for those. Now with Splunk, you have that all in one place, so you're not going to be double charged. And then instrument for the last time, this is a nod to OpenTelemetry, so which I know that, Sunny, you can go into detail on Thursday at 8 a.m.
Thursday at 8 a.m. But just to kind of give you a little bit, so anybody has heard about OpenTelemetry here? Okay, good.
Okay, awesome.
So you have to register for the session. But jokes apart, it's critical to any strategy for observability. And I'll give you an example where I have a customer, very close customer we've been working with. They started with OpenTelemetry without us telling them. Then we got introduced to them. And it took them 2 days to switch over from one observability platform to another. It was just 2 days. And the customer said this was the test of OpenTelemetry, because what they did was they instrumented everything using OpenTelemetry open source collectors, and they were sending data to one single platform which was supporting OpenTelemetry. They had some not so good experience in terms of money or cost for the tooling, and they decided to switch to Cisco. And at that point of time, the customer said, I think this is the time to test whether our OpenTelemetry strategy works or not. And literally, they have a pool of collectors. These are like Kubernetes, running on Kubernetes, and they're getting data from all their apps as well as infrastructure, all the API data. And they added a line of code to say, all these collectors will now send data to the new platform as well. So they're actually able to send it on both the places. And then all the use cases, the alerts starting to light up in the new tool, and all they had to do was to integrate with their internal systems to get started. So in 2 days, they switched over everything, and then in a couple of weeks, which is now finished, they have already moved off from the previous tool. And they're just keeping it for data or historical data right now. So that's the power of OpenTelemetry, where you do not really get the vendor lock-in, which is, I know it's a very cliche term, but it helps a lot. Anyways, the other thing which I missed was that OpenTelemetry doesn't mean that you're waiting on Cisco or Splunk, but there are, at this time, thousands of developers in the community building and checking in code. So really, observability is being built by the community, and you can start using all of that because it's all open source. So that's the other big benefit of going open source. All right, let me go into the demo, Annette, and
let's do it.
Start talking about Splunk Observability Cloud. So just to kind of, I had a slide which set up about the demo, but I'll read it out to you. So essentially, we are talking about payment gateway system, which is for an online retail store. And a code check-in has happened, and people are complaining, right? Hey, something is wrong. I'm not able to go ahead and make orders anymore. So we'll just go into Splunk Observability Cloud, and I'm not starting with an alert. I'll directly go into the root of the problem, or in terms of where the problem is showing up, and then take you through the journeys to how can we quickly identify problem, do the before and after, and then, as Annette said, can I bring metrics, events, logs, traces, all of them together to find the root cause quickly without losing the context and jumping into multiple tools. I'll sit for this one. Annette, point out if I'm not doing the right thing, all right? So what you're looking at is Splunk Observability Cloud. So of course, I am in one of my tenants, which is US Splunk Show. And on the left-hand side, you can see all the capabilities which are available. As I said, full stack observability does not mean that you're just looking at infrastructure or just looking at cloud. You have to look at your end users as well. So the solution provides you application level, infrastructure level, logs, as well as real user monitoring and synthetics. And synthetics is where you can be proactive, make sure that you're always measuring the digital experience without having to have your user go through that pain point. Now what I'll do is, for the sake of this demo, we'll jump directly into APM, and we'll start looking at what are the big things which are happening in the environment. And off the bat, I should just increase the screen size a little bit, or you guys should move in front, but anyways. Off the bat, you can start seeing that I am looking at all the top services. These are all business services which are running, and what is the latency? By the way, it's important that you're not looking at just peaks or valleys, but you're looking at percentile data to make the right decision. We do that out of the box. So we look at the percentiles to ensure that you can look at P90, P95, P99 value, depending upon what your KPIs are. And in this particular case, I can see there are various services which are having a latency. There are various services where I can see error rates as well. Now, one of the things which I like to do is to get a full visibility into what's happening to my microservices. So what we'll do is we'll jump into the service map. And this is what I was talking about, which is automatically created based on OpenTelemetry data. Now, what does it mean? Whether you're running Java applications, Python, Go, there are like 10 or 12 different language frameworks, or .NET, which are all supported by OpenTelemetry, and more are being added. And what's happening over here is that a developer, even without writing code, is able to auto-instrument their applications, where they just include the OpenTelemetry library in the code, and as soon as they do that, the library automatically detects what kind of applications you're running, what languages you're using, and how these services are talking to each other, and what ports, and so on and so forth. And that helps us build this service map, which is showing you how from the front end, the data is flowing to the checkout service. Rest everything is gray because everything is running fine. The only thing where I can see a problem is the checkout service, where the latency is high. You can see the latency is in seconds, should be in milliseconds ideally. And this is going into the backend service, which is the payment gateway service, which is also showing a bunch of errors. Now, off the bat, even without me looking, searching, the system is highlighting where the problem is. Now, finding where the problem is, it's easy at this stage, but what's the root cause is always a situation. So since we know that the new code has been checked in, we can actually start looking at some of the different things which we can do with OpenTelemetry as well as this data stream. Now, as I said, we are not just looking at span data to build this map, but we are overlaying metrics on top of it, which is telling us what exactly is the latency right now and what is the error rate. Now, let me just click on this service and see more details. As you can see, there are around 1.97 seconds worth of errors, or 1.7K errors total, in terms of out of 2.3K requests which are going in, which is around 70%, 75% drop. In terms of network, you will say packet drops, but in this case, 75% of orders which are coming in through the front-end application or the website are dropping. They're not going through, the payments are not going through. So you're literally losing revenue in this particular case. Now, what I like to do at this point is leverage some of the tag data in OpenTelemetry. We have a capability called Tag Spotlight, and what it's basically doing is it's looking at all the tags which are in the baggage of the data. So we're not just leaving that data for searching, but we are using that and auto-analyzing that to figure out what those tags are. So in this particular case, as you can see, I'm showing all the tags which have values. And remember, if a tag has a single value, it's basically yes, right? A tag can be having two values or multi-values, which can be yes or no. So it's always good to see what the current tag value is. If it's 1, it means that there is no change happening. But if you have multiple tags in a given tag or values, it means there are changes happening to properties or configurations. So over here, I see a bunch of tags where there is a single code. Oh, I see some over here, which is showing HTTP status code 401. And all the requests are erroring out in this case. So, and you can see only 575 requests are going through, which is a 200, which basically means around 75% traffic is dropping, as I was seeing earlier. As I go through this single value tags or multi-value tags, I can now see order IDs. So these are all individual orders which are coming from the end users, and I can see how many of them are erroring out right off the bat. Now, the interesting thing over here is what I like to call version. Of course, there's a tag for any software and application which has version on it. And you can see that I have 2 versions listed. Version 3.50.10, where there are 1.7K requests, and all of them are erroring out. So this is the code, which is the latest version. And if I look at 3.3509, all the requests have passed. So there's no drop request there. So now I know that there is a problem in the version. Of course, I don't know what the problem is. And I need to verify that, because this is data. Can I actually see and visualize this? So let me do this. Let me just close out of this. And what I like to do is to break down these services by these tags. What does that mean? So right now you're looking at the live data. So this is the after. As you can see, there's one big red circle showing the problem. Let me just break down this by version and try to bring in the second version as well, or the version as well, which we were looking at. And let me use the value errors. And off the bat, what we've done is we've created this time machine, which can now show you that, all right, on the latest version, I can see 450 milliseconds of latency, and I can see errors, as you were seeing earlier. But I see lesser latency on the previous version, which was before when I deployed the change. So now I can compare between the new release and the old release in this time machine to see what's going on. And I can see that there were 0 requests to the previous version of the code. Everything was passing through. So there is definitely something which has gone wrong with the new check-in, which our developer has done. Now, at this point of time, the SRE doesn't know what's going on, right? And you're just stuck in terms of knowing that there is a problem. You need to call somebody, or you need to kind of go and find what's going on. Usually at this time, the SREs are kind of either blaming the infrastructure or blaming the code. It could be either of that, or network in a lot of cases as well. But clearly, this is a release-to-release comparison, so the best thing to look at would be the logs, right? And now, traditionally, people take all this context, call somebody else and say, look into the logs, and you might find a problem. What we've done is we've made sure that with Splunk Observer Connect, we are connecting to your logs directly, natively from this screen itself to ensure that we can find issues in the logs or the root causes in the logs. In fact, what you see over here is I can see 2 connections for this service, the infrastructure connection. So as I said, we know if I have to go and look for infrastructure issues, I can go into Kubernetes directly and start looking at what's going on. But in this case, let's look at the logs. And logs are right off the bat, and I can see that for that payment service, we have found logs right off the bat. So now, as a user, you don't have to switch tools, you don't have to switch context. Right in the context, you are able to click on that button, and what we'll do is we'll start streaming the logs for the time period when the problem happens, if it works. Oh, the live demo gods are not happy now. All right, let's see. Okay. All right, should I go to my video?
It's always the excitement with live demos.
Okay, let's do it one more time. Let's just go into the service map, go to the payment service, and it's looking. Okay, let's just do this. I did get the opportunity to record this, so we'll use the technology that way. All right, so same environment, same service. I did record this, so let me just go ahead and go full screen and jump to the part where the demo gods were happy at that time. So here, off the bat, you can start seeing the Splunk Observability Cloud screen. And what I'll do is I'll probably go around 75% and then see if I can play this. All right, let's go further. All right. There you go. So from that screen, we are basically jumping into the log screen. And when the demo gods were happy, I can see all the errors pertaining to that particular service right over here. Now, again, what I can do is I can use the same context of labels and start looking at all the extracted fields in the log. So Splunk Cloud does a fantastic job of finding fields and automatically going ahead and indexing them for you so that you can start using them to filter your logs. And what I'm doing is I'm actually finding out logs for the previous version and the new version and making sure I'm only looking at the new version and start looking at all the errors. So it's confirmed that in the latest version, I can see these errors. And if I go into one of these errors, you can start seeing the root cause right inside any of these errors. I can see the context of the trace ID and the span ID, which is passed by the open telemetry collector, which means now I have a connection between the application service and logs. And off the bat, you can start seeing that there is a failed payment processing through BRKAPP payments, and it says invalid API token. Now, what does it mean? Basically, if I look at the invalid API token, I can see a test token out there. So a lot of times developers go ahead and test in their environments where they want to use an API token to connect. And the person has left the test token in the production code and checked that in. So again, I was showing this demo in like 5 minutes going through each screen, but essentially just within 2 clicks, I'm able to do a version comparison and then immediately jump into the logs to figure out why the new version has a problem, and I can find the smoking gun that there is an invalid API token. And this is the power of connecting all the metrics, events, logs, and traces together so that you're able to find those smoking gun as soon as possible. Cool, that Worked. The video worked. All right, apologies for that. Some network connectivity issues, but we did have a backup. So that was the demo. Let me just switch over to some of the slides. Any questions on the demo or on what you saw so far? Is it good, bad, ugly? Any feedback? All right, okay, makes sense.
Cool.
So how customizable is this? Like, if I have an appliance type thing where I can enable OpenTelemetry tracing, do I have to still use but the appliance doesn't allow me to like inject any jar files?
Yep.
So is it possible to bring in this visibility to my appliance as well, which is where I can enable the OpenTelemetry tracing and stuff like that?
Yep.
It just needs a collector that collects and
Absolutely. So you can use any upstream OpenTelemetry collector, feed any OpenTelemetry signal to it, and send it back to Splunk Observability, and we'll show you the service map just like that. In fact, we just started a project in OpenTelemetry on mainframe observability, because that's becoming a big thing with customers that mainframe is still there. I need to look at it, and it's becoming expensive to observe it. So we are building that as well. Yep.
And does it include database visibility as well, because it was not
Yeah. Yes, we support all different kind of databases, on-prem as well as cloud. So they are included in the infrastructure piece. So I was showing you APM pieces. If you look at infrastructure, and if you have a SQL or an Oracle database, it's already supported. And you can see the connectivity to that as well.
So the data that we get for the database piece would be from the infrastructure, like how the database is. Or we go drill down into like.
We go down into indexes, we look at queries. So if you've seen the CSAS functionality in AppDynamics, it has all of that for modern databases. Yep.
The same thing is
Applicable over here. Yep. Yes.
Is there work to be done to correlate those requests so they can show past that correlation ID or something?
So all you need to do is to make sure you're using OpenTelemetry. OpenTelemetry has a concept of trace, as you know, and each of the requests is tagged with a trace and a span ID. So once the spans come in, we look at all the trace IDs, collect them together, and we call it trace analyzed per minute. That's the metric. And the good news is that the Splunk Observability Platform does not charge you for spans. It charges you for traces analyzed. So it becomes economical, let me just put it that way. Otherwise, you can have big bills on having spans for each and every workflow, especially in a very complex environment. Yeah. So that way, it's a more, I would say, feasible solution, and it's easier to cut costs on that one. Yeah. Okay, I do have a couple of slides. I think, let's see if I can jump to one of them. In fact, we have a few customers who've already leveraging the benefits. Annette, you're the best person to talk about this.
I mean, you're seeing most of it right up here. I can speak to it a little bit. So Lenovo actually saw MTTR. I think it went from 30 minutes to under 5. So they saw a pretty substantial reduction there. BRKAPP actually had 100% reliability, so they had 0 unplanned downtime, even though their orders increased by 300% during the pandemic. And then lastly, Quantum Metric actually delivered 90% faster development, so freed up time for folks. Very quick, because I know we only have a short period of time left, so we can jump to those next ones.
Sure. All right, so again, I think this is more summing up everything, talking about Cisco Splunk. Again, we just gave you an overview of what has happened in 35 days of us coming together. There are a bunch of demos which we have on the show floor as well. It's called the FSO Showcase, or the Cisco and Splunk booth, where you can go ahead and have conversations and see those demos live as well, especially around the AppDynamics and Splunk integrations. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure at SplunkConf next week, we'll be announcing a bunch of new innovations.
Yeah, if anyone wants to come back to Vegas next week, you can join me at our conference. We're going to be down at the Venetian. So we're going to have a bunch of additional fun stuff that we're launching next week that I can't talk about because
right now,
my teams would hate me if I divulged that.
All right, with that, I think that was our last slide. please go ahead and fill up these session evaluations. You can talk about how the live demo didn't work. No, just kidding. But would love to get your feedback. Would love to know what you like, what you did not like. What more do you want to see in these sessions? Because that helps us make sure that we create these sessions for you. So you've taken all the time and effort to come in. So thank you once again. I do have a couple of other important slides to show, I've been told. So continue your education. These are our email addresses. So if you need access to any of this technology, just send an email to Annette or myself, and we'll make sure that we can get you trials or whatever you need or support from your account teams so that you're able to kind of start using these and start working with this. And with that, we finished a little early. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for choosing this session.
Have quite a few demos down on the floor. So if you do want to dig in more to some of our integration work that we have, and then also some of our other products for Splunk, we've got those down there. We have a bunch of product managers. We've got a bunch of really, really knowledgeable people down there on the floor that can answer any questions that you do have. So,
cool. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks all.
Thanks, Annette.